Hey, fellow classic comic collectors. As always, I'm Scott Harris King, and today I'm not talking actually about comics, I'm talking about movies. Yes, my wife and I recently went to see Captain America Brave New World, and I'm going to do a spoiler filled review of that movie right now. And by review, I mean it's been a couple weeks since I've seen it, and I'm trying to remember what happened in it. So that's, I guess, part of the review right there. But before I get any further, again, this is going to be filled with spoilers. So if you haven't seen the movie, just be warned, I'm going to spoil it because I have to. Um, but I also have, 5 years of other videos that you could watch. So if you go to one of my playlists, instead of watching this, you could watch 500 other videos in a row. And by the time you're done with that, you probably, it'll be 2030 and you won't care about the spoilers anymore. So, all right, let's talk about Captain America Brave New World. So, top level thoughts on the movie are simply that um, it was pretty good. It was definitely better than reviews that I've seen because it actually did not do well with reviewers for reasons I'll get into, and I get it. But actually, I think it was pretty good. So not nearly as bad as a lot of the reviews sort of made it out to be. Also, not as bad as some fans were trying to make it out to be. I would say pretty good. I would give it maybe a B minus, possibly a C plus. But overall, I thought it was pretty good. I did think it was sort of better, more entertaining, just sort of, and more MCU ish than a lot of their more recent movies have been. So, I mean, I was happy to see it. I like Sam as Captain America. I like the characters in it. There's a lot of stuff to like about it. The acting was good. So, overall, happy I saw it, and it was pretty good. Having said that, I mean, I have some critiques, and then I have some stuff that I liked about it. Let me start with what I like about it. I try to be a positive man. So, one thing that was super interesting and a very, very bold choice was ultimately the movie hinges on MCU continuity from the two least popular MCU movies ever made. And that's the Ed Norton Incredible Hulk movie from 2008 and The Eternals. Now, almost nothing from that Ed Norton movie has ever been even referenced before. So it's super bold to use that as the foundation for this whole Captain America movie 17 years later. And the other main thing that is a huge part of the plot here is dealing with the Celestial that died at the end of Eternals after partially emerging from the Earth, and so there's an Eternal head and arm and stuff coming up out of the ocean. And that, again, that movie came out a few years ago now, and that's basically hasn't barely been mentioned at all anywhere. And I know I'm not the only MCU fan that's been wondering, isn't anyone gonna say anything about that, like, titanically enormous alien coming up out of the ocean that's so big that it like breaks the curvature of the Earth with its giganticness? Just forgetting the science of how that would like throw off everything about the planet's, you know, rotation or whatever. Forget all that. But just like, aren't we? We're not just not even going to mention that happened. Well, they did mention it. In fact, it's a very key part of the plot. So I thought it was super bold to take these two forgotten MCU movies that nobody liked, and use that as the foundation for the plot for your new Captain America movie, right? And I liked what they actually did with both of those things. So, I mean, they kind of just used the Eternals thing a little bit as a MacGuffin because they used it as a way to introduce adamantium to the MCU, and then everyone's scrambling to sort of get that new resource from the body of the Celestial, right? So that's the basic plot. Is all the different governments are trying to get their piece of the Celestial pie. So I liked that. I liked the character stuff. I really liked all the stuff with Isaiah, the first Captain America, um, and I really liked. Well, here's where I start to get into actually the criticism. I liked where they were going with it. I liked that they were trying theoretically to say something. So before I get into this, I want to say I'm not going to discuss politics other than the through the lens of this movie, like what the movie was trying to do. And I'm not going to comment on that either way, except to say Captain America is an inherently political character. Um, you have to, whenever you're doing anything with Captain America, you have to be aware of the fact that the stories with Captain America are going to automatically be viewed through a political lens because the character is overtly a political character. And so this is something that I run into that I have to be aware of when I do my comic Cthulhu versus Uncle Sam, is that anything that has Uncle Sam as the main character, Uncle Sam has a lot of baggage, more than Captain America, and people are going to read into things based on the fact that Uncle Sam is the character doing things, right? And so when I work on plotting an issue of Cthulhu versus Uncle Sam, I have to be aware of that, and I have to make sure that I'm intentional about any messaging that I put in it. Because if I'm not intentional or aware of how the content could be viewed, there's a certainty that someone's going to misread it, right? Because they're going to project things onto it that maybe I didn't intend. So that's why I have to intend what I'm doing. I have to be intentional with whatever the content is. We see that here in this movie. And the other thing I want to say is, in general, as a rule, I think subtext works a lot better than text. If you put out a movie that's preaching, or a book or a comic book that's preaching to someone, they're going to get irritated. They're going to tune you out. Nobody likes that. So what you have to do is just tell a good story that has the subtext of whatever your actual message is. And then some people will figure out what you're trying to say, and some people won't figure it out, but they'll still absorb the lesson unintentionally, right? But like, that's always more effective, is subtext. Okay, having said all that, it's very obvious to me as a writer, two things: that they had a very clear message, political message that they were going for, and that somebody along the line got cold feet about delivering that message and watered it down to the point where it's not just subtext, it's like barely there. There's a bunch of things in the movie where they went right up to the line where felt like they were about to say something, and say something important, and then they backed away and they didn't actually say what they seemed like they were gonna say. And so I felt like the movie lacked the courage of its convictions. Like, I felt like someone probably, now there was 5 different writers credited to it, and so my guess is that the original scripts, I mean, it could have gone either way, but basically someone was like, let's say something. Like the Captain America and the Falcon and the Winter Soldier TV show had a clear message. So they're like, let's say something with this. And so they wrote something that really had a powerful message. And then that was sort of rewritten and directed and edited out of the film. And it was very frustrating. Whether you agree with what the message was or not, what it does is it waters down the film so that it's kind of neither here nor there. It's not really saying anything because the message just gets so muddled and is so faint. And I'm a huge believer as a writer that a story has to be about something, or else it's not a story. It's just a sequence of events. Now, this movie is about different things. A big part of it is a character piece about Thunderbolt Ross, and his relationship with his daughter. So, like, it's about various things, but it's about too many things that don't mesh with each other, and none of them are gotten into in enough detail for them to really land. Specifically, there's some potentially powerful imagery where the original Captain America, who of course is black, if you've seen the TV show, that's kind of what the whole thing um, is about how he was unfairly treated. Uh, and basically, there's a thing where he gets mind controlled and he tries to kill the president. And there's a sequence where the police chase him down and they have him on gunpoint and they have him laying in the ground, and one of them is over there like roughing him up a little, although he's Captain America, he has superpowers, whatever. That whole sequence seemed very much like intentionally designed to sort of have echoes of police violence and George Floyd and stuff like that. uh, but then it didn't go anywhere, and it wasn't really made explicit. It was like they set up the scenario that where it seemed like that's the messaging they were going to be going for, but then they didn't. Like the way it was shot, the way it was just the way it was edited, the way it was done. If that was supposed to be the message, which I think it was, they were definitely like, well, that might scare people, so let's allude to it, but barely. And there were several things like that. I mean, when you look at the plot of the movie, it's about how a giant orange rage monster destroys the White House. Now, this movie was being made during the Biden administration, but it's not exactly an unclear metaphor. It seemed obvious that the whole idea of it was should have been a commentary on Trump. Again, I don't want to talk about politics. It doesn't matter what you think on either side or whatever, but that's what the setup is. So they set it up to be a comment on Trump's first presidency, because again, this was made before the election, but then they didn't actually follow through on it. Like, they made it so vague that it, like, you had to really squint to see what they were doing with it. Yeah, I mean, yes, Thunderbolt Ross is Red Hulk in the comics, but he's not the president, right? So, like, because I don't think he is. I haven't really read many of those. But, I mean, it seemed like it was clear that by having the antagonist in the movie be the president, and then all the visuals and just the whole thing with him just literally destroying the White House, physically, literally destroying it. The metaphor was there. They set up the metaphor, and then they didn't do anything with it. And so again, regardless of what you think politically, one side or the other, just from a storytelling perspective, the fact that they didn't follow through on the setup means that the movie felt like they didn't believe in what they were doing. And there was several points along the way where there were smaller things that was the same thing, where like they were getting at a point, but then they didn't get to it. They were alluding to an idea, but then they didn't comment on it. And it was just frustrating because it felt like somewhere in there was a really powerful, really good movie, and then they just didn't do it. I think the best MCU movie, we're on like almost 30 movies now, but the best one still to me is Captain America and the Winter Soldier. And that movie, is a great spy thriller, tons of awesome action, the character stuff, but it's commenting on on the post 9/11 American, Homeland Security and the chain, stuff like that. Like it's a clear commentary on those things, but done in a way where like you get the message without it being heavy handed, and it's still and it's just a really good movie, and so it just delivers. You know, this had all the pieces to do that, and then they got scared. It felt to me as a viewer like they got scared to actually do it. So that's why I was kind of disappointed. I mean, the other thing is like the stakes ended up feeling really small. Again, we're just talking a lot about storytelling and structure and writing, but a flaw for me was that they're building up this huge global conflict around um, getting the resources from the Celestial, right? And then when they have this big sequence where the U.S. almost goes to war with Japan, and there's like all this stuff, and it looks like World War III is about to break out, and Sam manages to defuse the situation. But that's not the climax of the film. That's the end of Act 2. So then we go into Act 3, which is normally the climax of the film, and the climax is, that the president turns into the Red Hulk and has a fist fight for a little while, and then he remembers he loves his daughter and turns back into a guy. Well, I mean, I know the Hulk is a big, powerful, destructive force, but the stakes at the end of the movie are so much smaller than the stakes in the middle of the movie. Because there's a huge difference between World War III happening and one angry supervillain smashing a building. So, like, the ending wasn't satisfying. It ended up making the whole movie feel a lot smaller than it should have, because when we get to the end where the stakes are supposed to be the biggest, they're kind of at their smallest. Also, the stakes are not for the main character. I mean, the Hulk is not really the president / Hulk is not the bad guy, but he's almost like a co-lead character. And again, when you think about like story structure, the character that Sam has his arc, I guess, but the character that actually changes from the beginning of the movie to the end of the movie, that has the biggest sort of character arc, is actually Thunderbolt Ross, not the main character. So the movie ultimately ends up, I think, because they backed away from a lot of the commentary that they were almost doing about race in America and all this stuff, that moved Sam Wilson out of the center of the movie, and it moved Thunderbolt Ross into the center of the movie, so that his development and his relationship with his daughter and all this stuff becomes the central character arc of the movie, and he's not the main character. So the stakes ended up feeling extra small because the stakes are not for the main character at the end. I mean, only in the sense, is he going to get killed by the Hulk or not? But they're not really like, they're just not there. And so it ended up making it feel like this was like a really, like a double-sized episode of an MCU TV show that was like well done, but didn't feel like a big blockbuster like it should have. So yeah, so as you can see, I do have a lot of criticisms of it. I still thought it was pretty good. Like I said, B-, C+. As a viewing experience in the theater, it worked better than some of the more recent Marvel films that I've seen. So like, I liked it. It's definitely worth watching. They tease that they're gonna reform the Avengers, and so at the end, Sam is gonna go out and reform the Avengers, which is obviously going to be setting up the next Avengers movie. They had a post-credit scene with the leader that was absolute hot garbage. It was just him going, "Oh, there's going to be a multiverse. You think fighting supervillains is bad? Wait till you have to fight superheroes from other realities." And it's like, okay, we've already seen that there's a multiverse several times from other movies. And all of those movies, even Ant-Man 3, did it better because they actually showed you the other characters. Instead of having just like a doofus in a cell warn you that something bad's going to happen, show us the characters. Like, we all want to see these characters from these other realities. Show us that stuff in the teaser. Don't just tell us it's going to happen. Show it. That's the cool part. So, yeah, that, like, everything is kind of a mixed bag with the movie. For everything they did right, they did something wrong. So, it's definitely not a top tier Marvel movie. There's a lot of good Marvel movies, but they've started to have enough sort of mediocre or worse movies that I'm not even sure this one's in the bottom of the list. Uh, like, if we're dividing I think there's 28 or 29, but let's say 30 movies into top 10, middle 10, bottom 10. And I haven't made this list. Maybe I should do a video. What do you think? Let me know down below if you want me to rank them all. But I would say this is probably at the bottom half of the middle 10. So my guess is if I did rank everything, I'd be slotting this in somewhere around 18. So it's like it's not that bad. It's not as bad as some of the other ones. It's pretty good. It's got a lot of good stuff going for it. I just wanted it to be better. So those are my thoughts. Let me know what you think down below. Please don't leave any political comments. Please don't talk about politics. Please. But if you have any comments about the movie or whatever, please leave those down below. And I'll see you next time.